Julia, the mother, and what some have said, the muse of John Lennon. Although her personality was described as electric, eccentric, comedic, her life was mired in difficulty and ultimately tragedy. Her story is one of love and loss, but it's also a story of encouragement that led to one of the most celebrated artists in human history.
Half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it just to reach you, Julia. Julia, Julia, ocean child calls me, so I sing a song of love. Julia, Julia, seashell eyes, windy smile calls me, so I sing a song of love. Julia.
Julia is married to a man named Alfred Lennon, whom she met 11 years earlier at a park when she was 14 and he was 15, where she told him his bowler hat was silly and immediately chucked it into a lake. Julia is the one who proposed. The day after Julia and Alfred wedded, her new husband, who was in the merchant navy, promptly went back to sea for 3 months, foreshadowing the difficulties of the relationship to come. In 1940, during World War II, Julia discovers she is pregnant with John Lennon, but Alfred was serving as a merchant seaman, so he wasn't there for the pregnancy or John's birth. However, he did send money to Julia while he was at sea. That is until he deserted in 1943. After John's birth, Julia, while still married to Alfred Lennon, finds the comfort in a man named John Dickens, where she, Dickens, and infant John Lennon lived together. Julia's sister, Mimi Smith, took great exception to her married sister living with another man, and all three sleeping in the same bed, so she contacted social services twice. This ultimately leads to Julia handing over John to his Aunt Mimi, begrudgingly. 3 years later, Alfred Lennon takes John Lennon on a vacation, but Julia discovers that her husband has a secret plan to steal John away to New Zealand. She and Dickens confront Alfred Lennon in Blackpool. Alfred tries to convince Julia to go with him to New Zealand as well. She refuses, and it is alleged that they asked John to choose between his mother and father, where young John Lennon chooses his father twice but reconsiders and cries for his mother. Although heartbreaking and quite a story, John having to choose between his mom and his dad at a young age isn't a confirmed fact. In the end, John stays with his mom and won't see his father again until he becomes famous. Without his father, John is now living with Julia for a few weeks until she decides to give him back to Aunt Mimi under the pressures of motherhood. John would later blame himself, saying, "My mother couldn't cope with me." As John grew up living with his Aunt Mimi, he would frequently see Julia, where she helped educate him in music, even purchasing him his first guitar. Julia taught John his first chords and how to play the banjo, even though Aunt Mimi disagreed with the venture. After all, John was Julia's child, and they created a bond that Julia would not see the complete fruits of. Because in 1958, Julia is on her way home from visiting Mimi's house and is accompanied by her friend Nigel Wally. Nigel, a bit ahead of Julia as they cross the street, hears a collision behind him. As he turns around, he sees Julia in the air. Julia lost her life that day, and John Lennon lost his mother. Julia is one of my personal favorite songs by the Beatles. I believe because it is so personal, a rare insight into John Lennon that he would go on to incorporate more and more into his solo work. The beautiful finger picking that John actually learned from Donovan, and an almost stream of consciousness, lyrics, and melody that gives the song a sense of great pain, but also hopefulness. Now, of course, there is no doubt that this song is about John Lennon's mother, Julia, but it is also obvious that when John says, "Ocean child calls me," he is referring to his budding relationship with Yoko Ono, being that her name means child of the sea in Japanese. We can hear John's desire for the love of a woman that he finally found in Yoko, and some say it borders on John being romantically in love with his mother. But to me, I see it as John's desire for nurturing love that a woman can give because they are able to be mothers. But who really knows? Finally, a beautiful fact about this song is John's usage of a poem called Sand and Foam by Khalil Gibran, which shows John's love for literature, but also his ability to put himself in the shoes of other artists. Because of course that's what we're doing here. It's not always about the clinical, straight facts. It's also about how the song affects us. This reality allows us to put ourselves into the thoughts and the heart of an artist. The poem is beautiful. See if you can notice some of the similarities between Julia and Sand and Foam. Half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it so that the other half may reach you. A sense of humor is a sense of proportion. My loneliness was born when men praised my talkative faults and blamed my silent virtues. When life does not find a singer to sing her heart, she produces a philosopher to speak her mind. No doubt a beautiful poem that I think everyone should take the time to read, but a gorgeous song that celebrates the love of a mother and shows gratitude for the nurturing and worthy lover.
Her hair a floating, sky is shimmering, glimmering in the sun. Julia, Julia, morning moon, touch me, so I sing a song of love. Julia, when I cannot sing my heart, I can only speak my mind. Julia, Julia, sleeping sand, silent cloud, touch me, so I sing a song of love. Julia. Calls me, so I sing a song of love for Julia, Julia, Julia. Submarines and scuba divers at the shore wait in line to take.
Well everyone, as promised, this year is all about celebrating you, and the first artist I'd love to recommend is As I Recall It. I've listened to about 12 of their songs, and I have to say, there is some serious talent there, especially if you're a Beatles fan. So please use the links I've listed below and check it out, and begin this year by encouraging people to make art and take chances.
Did some house today. Dad sat and watched telly all day, and there's no life without your love. The heating doesn't work anymore. My girlfriend's walking out of the door, and there's no light without your love. You really left at the wrong time. Dad insulting me in rhyme, a poet of the vulgar sense. Every night is such a chore. There's no love here anymore, and there's no life without your love.
So check out As I Recall It and tell them the Holly Hub sent you. See you next time.